It's an exhibit in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. called the Throne of the Third Heaven. It's an amazing 180-piece collection. It's beautiful. Some pieces are large chairs and tables, and some pieces are really small cups and little pieces. It was made by a man named James Hamilton, and no one really knew who he was. He was just a janitor in the D.C. area. But what's amazing is that this collection was found in his garage after his passing. No one knew that for 20 years he was creating this amazing masterpiece. On the screen, it looks like it's gold and silver and jewels, but in reality, this janitor in the D.C. area created this amazing masterpiece out of what we might call junk, things you would throw away. Pieces of paper, cardboard, tape, old light bulbs. He assembled all this together. Aluminum and gold foil is what is on the outside. And in his garage, what they found with this collection was on his bulletin board, Psalm 29 and verse 18, which says, "Without vision, the people will perish." What Mr. Hamilton believed was most important for people to see, to have, was a vision of the glory of God. And so he sat out single-handedly to give it to them. I agree. I agree with him. If there's anything we need, if there's anything that I believe we're short on these days, it is a clear, consistent picture of the glory of God. And that's why this year the shepherds have so wisely picked a theme, and that is let's get off ourselves. The past couple of years we've looked at growing individually in our walk and in our own spiritual development, and that's important. But this year, let's look heavenward. Let's look up. Let's see life not from earth up, but from heaven down. Let's look at ourselves and our relationships. Let's look at this church. Let's look at truth. Let's look at life from God's perspective. That's what we're doing this year. And we're starting today, this first quarter, by looking at God from His perspective. How God would reveal Himself to us. Not how I think about God or I would view God or portray God. Seeing God the way that He sees Himself. And you know, that's kind of an interesting thought. Have you considered it before? How would you introduce God to someone who doesn't know Him? How would you describe God? What words would you use? What attributes would you point out? How would you describe His attitude, His character, or His tone? How about this one for you? What would you give for a glimpse of God? What would you give just for a peek today into heaven's window to get a glimpse of God Himself? You want to see it with me? Isaiah chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, lofty and exalted, with the train of His robe filling the temple. Seraphim stood above Him, each having 6 wings. With 2 He covered His face, and with 2 He covered His feet, and with 2 He flew. And one called out to another and said, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of His glory." And the foundations of the thresholds trembled at the voice of Him who called out while the temple was filling with smoke. And I said, "Woe is me, for I'm ruined, because I'm a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts." Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongues. He touched my mouth with it and said, "Behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me." He said, Go and tell this people, keep on listening, but do not perceive. Keep on looking, but do not understand. Render their hearts of this people insensitive, their ears dull, and their eyes dim. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and return and be healed. Isn't that amazing? What do you see? Not God the way I imagine Him. Not God the way that I would describe Him. When God chooses to reveal Himself in Scripture, what do you see? You got something to write down? I see 4 things. Ready? 4 amazing, simple, amazing attributes of this one we call God. Here's number 1. Ready? God is alive. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord on the throne. Uzziah is dead. The Lord lives on. Before creation, before time began. As the psalm would say, from everlasting to everlasting, that is our God. He is alive. I loved a few months ago, our brother Boyd, who was working for us in India now this Sunday, he said a few things at the Lord's Supper, and this is what he said. I wanted to repeat it to you. Millions of Muslims make pilgrimage annually to the grave of Muhammad in Saudi Arabia. Some of Buddha's ashen remains can be seen in a highly golden shrine in New Delhi Museum in India. Confucius is buried in China in the cemetery which bears his name. Mary Baker Eddy in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Mormon founder Joseph Smith's body still lies in the Smith Family Cemetery in Illinois. Across the spectrum of world religions, philosophers, and lifestyle gurus, Christianity stands uniquely apart regarding the fate of its founder. The angel's question still rings with clarity and will continue through the remainder of time. Why do you seek the living among the dead? Why would you seek the living? Why would you seek life? Why would you seek meaning? Why would you seek answer? Why would you seek any reasonable response at all among the dead? I love that. I loved his wisdom. God is alive. And yet the reality, which our brother is pointing out, is that there are many who live as if God is dead. In fact, is that not what Paul alluded to in the book of Romans chapter 1 when he talked about those who, notice on the passage, exchange the glory of the incorruptible God for an image in the form of corruptible man? God the immortal, God the all-powerful, God the one who is everlasting in our minds is just like everything else. Good for a moment, strong in a season, but like all things, it comes to an end. And I wonder, maybe in your mind, if that's what Sundays has become for you. That rather than coming to the throne of God and worshiping the God who is, we treat this like a memorial service, and we come to the God who did. We come to the God who once was. We come to the God who has done amazing things, and not the God who is listening to our very words and reading the very thoughts imprinted on our hearts. Any of you were alive when this magazine came out? Do you remember this? Is God dead? You know, there's many who live that way. Because if there is no God and God is dead, there is no king. There is no law. There is no ruler. And I can do what I want to do, however I want to do it. And if God is dead, there is no church. There's no value in religion. The Bible is a dry, dusty old history book. Jesus is nothing but an old prophet. All of this is nothing but a way to entertain some cultist afternoon on a Sunday. But brethren, in reality, if there is no God, there is no hope, there is no salvation, there is no meaning and no purpose of life. And the thing is, well, we get that. There's some who believe there is no God, and so God is dead. Brethren, there are some believers today who live as if God is dead. There's no accountability. I can live how I want to Monday to Saturday. Prayers are weak. Reading is empty because I don't believe that there's a God who continues to occupy the throne of heaven. Look at this. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord on the throne. He lives. Remember Moses? Some of us are going through that journey again when he came to God and God said, you're going to go to Pharaoh. And he says, well, who am I going to tell him is sending me? Who am I supposed to tell him is sending me? What name did he give him? I was a good God long ago. I will be the God of your people. He says, you tell them I am. My name forever is I am. Jesus said that this, in Matthew 22 and verse 32, is the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He's not the God of the dead, but of the living. Don't miss this point. And so when he calls his word in Hebrews 4 and verse 12, living words, living and active. You know what that means? These words written thousands of years ago have everything to do with your living today. They are still relevant. They are still applicable to your daily life today. He is alive. God is alive, which means God knows everything that's going on today. Everything across the world, everything in our country, everything in your life. God knows it. Because God is alive. And that means he is able to rescue and redeem and to answer and to comfort and to strengthen you. Good brethren, start with the basics. Look at your God. He's alive. And he's king. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord on the throne. On the throne of thrones, on the throne of heaven. You know, some of the language here might get a little lost on this. Pictured the Lord, he's on the throne, and then it pictures his robe. we don't really wear robes. It's not talking about like at a hotel, those nice comfy white robes. It's talking about the royal regal robes, those adorned and worn by nobility, by kings. And it talks about the train of his robe. You know, I'm curious. You don't have to raise your hand, but you can tell me afterwards. Didn't any of you ladies have a train on your wedding dress? Does that date you a little bit? There used to be a time when fancy to-dos, like big, elegant occasions, elegant dresses, wedding dresses, they would have those long flowing trains. And so I looked it up. I wanted to see who had some of the longest, is this offensive? The longest trains? That's what it's called, isn't it? I wanted to see who had the longest train on the dresses. Princess Diana had a 25-foot train. Can you imagine that? That's a long train to carry. And yet, as long as her train was on her dress, it didn't fill that Westminster Abbey when she was married. What's it say here about the Lord's train, the train of his robe? It fills the temple. Don't miss that detail. What is it saying? His rule, his power, his authority is infinite. It knows no end. He is king. Now, what's that mean for us? All right, I get the imagery. He's on the throne. What's that mean for me today? God has all authority. God has all authority. He is the one who gives authority. Romans 13 and verse 1, there's no authority except from God. Well, why? Why does God have a right to tell you how to live your life? Why does God have a right to give the rules? Well, think about it. He is the creator. Everything, every being, every person, every law, God made it all. Isaiah will ask the question in Isaiah 45 and verse 9, will the clay say to the maker, I don't think you're doing the right thing. What are you doing? No. God has a right to govern. God has a right to rule. God has a right to reign because no one is as strong. No one is as wise. No one is as powerful. No one can match the greatness of God. Now, here's what that means practically. Ready? Number one, if God makes a law, if God makes a rule, if God defines something, it stands. And so marriage in Genesis 2 and verse 24, when he says, for this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, they shall become one flesh. God defines marriage. One man, one woman for life. Well, that was then. Well, I'm not really sure that's what he means. Well, actually, I have a different opinion. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. God is king over kings, and if he defines it, that's it. Same thing with the church. Paul wrote that God, the Father, put Jesus, all things in subjection under his feet, and he gave him as head over all things to the church. Yes, that means his saved body, but more practically, even a local congregation. What are we supposed to do as a church? What's our activities? How do we worship? How do we work? How do we spend our money? Well, I know what we should do. I have an opinion. I know how we can fill this building full of people. Guess what? It's not my church because I didn't pay for it, did you? Jesus paid for it with his blood. He is the king, which means his rules, his laws, his governing, it's over all. There is no one over him, no authority over Jesus. The psalmist would say that he is the highest kings of all the heavens, the highest. Now, here's what that means. We have a hymn book. We haven't sung this song here in a while. You might remember it, though. There's a phrase in one of our hymns we sing, King of my life, I crown thee now. Do you remember that phrase? Have you thought about that? Hear that again. King of my life, I crown thee now. Do you realize when I say that Jesus is the King of kings, or that he's king over all, that means he's king over all of me. I crown thee now. And so if I will admit that Jesus is king, that means he is king of my plans and my purposes and my will. He is the king of my words and my habits and my finances and my relationships and my future. He is my king, the King of kings and the Lord of lords. Can I give a little caveat here? I need you to hear me. I have a feeling we're going to say this a lot this year, but I want to say it now on the first Sunday to make sure we have it here. It's been alluded to already in some of the prayers and in Ricky's sermon, but we need to hear it. In the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord on the throne. You know what's amazing is that Isaiah wasn't already talking about the next king and focused on the next king. I wonder if he's going to be a good king. I wonder if he's going to be a liberal king. I wonder if he's going to follow God's law. I wonder if he's going to do things that I find favorable. No, he was focused on the Lord. There's a quote that once says, when a mighty tree falls, more clearly can you see the sky. And the year that King Uzziah dies, more clearly than ever, Isaiah saw the reign and the rule of God. Here's the point. Stay with me. I need you to hear this for me this morning. This year is an election year. And always common for us, especially these kind of years, just to get so distracted with all the elections and all the biddings and all the prospects of what's going to happen this year. And what we fail to remember, no matter who gets elected, no matter who is appointed as president or senator or governor, God is on the throne. Can we say that? In the year of this elected official's reign, I saw the Lord on the throne. And the year that this person was elected out of office, I saw the Lord on the throne. You know what that tells us? Far more important than a donkey or an elephant is the Lamb of God whose kingdom cannot be shaken. I saw the Lord on the throne. When your tendency is to get all upset and worried and to jump on Facebook about who's winning or who's losing or who's going to win, remember, before America ever was, the Lord was on the throne. And he will be forever. Number 3, God is holy. God is holy. Those heavenly beings, verse 3, those seraphim call out, holy, holy, holy. You know, of all the attributes of God we see through Scripture, holiness seems to be the one that's mentioned the most. And so whether if it's Moses, as we're studying in the Exodus, who was told to take off his sandals because in the presence of God he was standing on holy ground. Or in a similar scene to this one in Revelation, those heavenly beings, those 4 amazing creatures who cry out in the same way, holy, holy, holy. How did Jesus begin the model prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Holiness. Here's the thing with holiness. When we talk about holiness, holiness is a church word. We don't talk about holy outside of here. Except for that one baseball guy kept it, holy smoke, holy cow, Harry Carey. We don't talk about holiness outside of here. Holiness is to divide. It's really what it means is to separate. But here's what it means. God's not like anything else. Not like anything. It's not like, I'm going to take the best person I know, the best. I mean, this person is, bar none, the best person I know. And if I just raise him 2 or 3 notches, that's God. Nope. You cannot compare God to any other. We use words like set apart, but holiness is wholly set apart. Listen to Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 25. To whom will you liken me that I should be his equal? Says who? The one to whom there is no equal. Says the Holy One. I was reading while in our trip, and I read about King Louis XIV, and it's fascinating that King Louis XIV, not unlike leaders today, was so into himself that just before he died, he wanted to make sure people always remembered him. And so he bought a gold coffin. He made it a law that they were to exclaim his name with great zeal, Louis XIV. In the cathedral where his casket was to be held, all lights were to be dimmed except for a single candle burning brightly placed on his casket, so all attention would be given to this glorious dead king. Well, he died, and all the orders were kept. But during the funeral, there at the casket, the candle was lit, the casket was closed, a bishop walked up, he picked up the candle, blew it out, and he said, there's only one who is great. Isn't that what Hannah said? There's none like the Lord. There's none besides you. There is no rock like our God. Do you get the point? Holiness is saying that there is no one in comparison to God. Nothing close. He is so different, so distinctive, so great, you cannot compare him to anything in our imagination. And that might explain something. It's going to help us in our study this month. You ever wonder why God was so upset about idolatry? I mean, of all the things that he was so adamant about in the Exodus and forward, he made it about idolatry. Don't make things in my likeness. Don't create images in my likeness. I mean, in the 10 Commandments, he says, you're going to have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the water under the earth. Do you know why? You can't paint God. You can't sculpt God. You can't draw God. You can't imagine God. You cannot duplicate God, and any kind of an attempt to mirror or imitate God always diminishes who he is. God will not fit in any box that we could try to build or create. He is holy. What's that mean for us? God is unlike any other. He is not common. Don't treat him that way. He's not like your friends, though he calls himself a friend to you and I. He's not like your earthly father, your dad, though he invites you to be his children and to call himself your father. He's not like any ruler that has governed any of our lands, although he calls himself our sovereign and our king. He is high above all else, and our response is this: fear him, respect him, honor him as such. Be thankful he invites you into a close relationship, but realize no one is like our God. I love the psalmist, Psalm 77, verse 13. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is like our great God? Have you thought of this? God is holy, and that means everything about God is holy. That means God's love is holy. No love is like God's love. No one can love you like God loves you. Not that way. Not perfectly. God's power and his wisdom is holy, unparalleled, unmatched by infinite degrees. God's justice, God's mercy, God's kindness, and on we can go. Our God is a holy God. No one is like him. And then let's put up our last attribute. God is glorious. As they sing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts in verse 3, the whole earth is full of his glory. Glory is another word we only really use here very much. And glory is tough to define. The word itself actually just means heavy. Isn't that interesting? Weight, heaviness. But you know, we used to do that. Do you remember in the 80s when something was really serious, you'd say, man, that's heavy. That's heavy. We talk about a weighty matter or a heavy burden. It signifies something that's really important. The weight of a matter, the heaviness of a thing. Glory came to represent the brightness, the splendor, the manifestation of God. And so you think of Moses who said, let me see your glory. And even in whatever little bit Moses got to see, remember, he came down from the mountain and they couldn't see him because he shone so bright. That's what glory came to represent. But when we talk about the glory of God filling the earth, here's what it means. If holiness is there's no one like your God, don't try and make him like us. He's not like you. He's not like me. He's not into the things that I'm into. I need to be into the things that he's into. He's not like me. He is special and he is distinct, and I need to treat him that way. That's holiness. Glory is he is far more important than anything that ever exists. And anything that might be considered important is only because it's wrapped up in God. Nothing compares to his importance. The only reason my job may be important is because God finds value and expresses his desire for me to be active in this work. It's only because of God it's important. My relationship with my family is important because God gave me that family. God ordained that family. That's why it's important. Glory is the weight of importance of God. The earth is full of his glory. It's a way of saying that God comes before all, everything that exists. Now I want to end with this. They took down my neon clock. Thank you. Oh, there it is. What's our response to God? This is 4 attributes of a book full of his characteristics. What is our response to this amazing God? Well, Isaiah shows us here. And if you have a pen or a piece of paper, I want you to write something down, if you will, because I want to give you 4 prayers. It's going to be fast. 4 prayers that come out of a response of who God is. These are 4 prayers we can pray into this new year. They would be great for us to have on our lips as we begin a new year. 4 prayers. You ready? 4 prayers out of response to who God is. Number 1, Lord, lift my eyes. Lord, lift my eyes. Far too often, our view of God is far too small, far too weak, far too common. We read a passage like Oh, magnify the Lord with me. And sometimes that word magnified means take something small and make it bigger. Use that magnifying glass and you make a bug look really big. Or scientists, they use a microscope and they see small cells and they make them look big. That does mean magnify. But you can also use the word magnify when you talk about big things, making them appear bigger. And so we use a telescope to look at planets. From our eye, planets are nothing but a speck, but you put it through the lens of a telescope, and now we start to see how grand it is. That's what David means when he says, magnify the Lord. It's not taking a small God and making him bigger. It's helping enlarge your vision to see just how great God is. Let's show the greatness of God together with me. That ought to be a prayer on our lips. Lord, lift my eyes. Lift them off of my cares and my burdens. Lift them off of my daily distractions. Lift them off of the world and help me to see you the way you have revealed yourself to us. Lift my eyes to your throne. And the year of this king's death, he saw the Lord. That ought to be a prayer. This year in 2020, Lord, lift my eyes to see you in every situation. Help me to see your glory. Here's our second prayer. Lord, humble my heart. Because in the presence of the Lord, Isaiah saw the Lord on the throne, but he also saw himself, who he really was, and he didn't like it. It was verse 5. That's what happens. That's what our shepherds are inviting you into this year. I hope you know that. If you're willing to see God for who he really is, how he has revealed himself to us, you will see yourself unlike ever before. And that's not always a good picture. Because in the presence of God's light, our darkness is exposed. In the presence of this holy God, our worldliness, it's shown clear. And the presence of his glory, the sin and corruption of our heart is easy to see. But if we want a heart free from pride, free from the lies and deception of sin, like Isaiah, a great prayer on my lips would be, Lord, not only let me see you, help me to see me the way you see me. Humble me. I'm not as great as I think I am. I'm not as strong as I think I am. I'm not as wise as I think I am. I don't have all the answers I claim to have. Humble me, God, and help me to see how helpless I am without you. And then forgive me. Forgive my sins. Isaiah was desperate, but he wasn't left there. Did you notice the remedy? In fact, it seems quite strange at face value. He claims his unworthiness before the throne of God, and then a seraphim comes, and he doesn't offer a sacrifice. He takes one of the burning coals and he touches it to his lips. Can you feel that through the passage? Can you imagine? You ever burn yourself, guys, on the grill? Ever touch a charcoal too early? Can you imagine pressing a burning red hot coal against your lips and hearing the singe as it burns your skin? Why? I mean, what is this supposed to show us? Why coal? Why did he do this to Isaiah? Besides just showing him forgiveness is painful, and I think that's part of it. Where would he have gotten that coal? In fact, where does the passage tell us? Where did he get the coal from? It was from the altar. Well, what did they do on that altar? Well, that's the altar they would use to kill animals for the sacrifices of sin. The coal, soaked with the blood of the sacrifice for the forgiveness of sins, pressed and burned against the sinner to purify and cleanse him from his sins. I mean, you realize that just 30 minutes ago, that's what we remembered? That some 700 years later, the cross soaked in blood for the price of forgiveness for people today. No, we do not have angels pressing hot coals against our lips. Jesus paid a price for us. But there's a point here. Forgiveness always comes with a cost. It always comes with a price. It costs God greatly. Can I ask you some questions? Just a few this morning. It'd be great to do it this year. as I see God and as we press forward this year, seeing God for who He is and seeing life from His perspective, and as we see ourselves, maybe this would be a great way to begin the year by asking questions like this. 2019, did I love the Lord my God with all of my heart and soul and mind and strength? Did I love my neighbor as myself, looking for the opportunities to do so? Did I judge unfairly or unharshly, based on outward appearance and not on the truth? Are the things in the year past, in 2019, that I regret? Things I wish I would have done differently, that if I could go back, I would undo? Do I sit into the new year in 2020 with a pure heart? Or have I come broken, needing that grace? Lord, forgive my sins. And then, Lord, send me to serve. Yes, he was of unclean lips, but that did not disqualify him from the service of God. And so when God asked, who's going to go out for us? Here am I, send me. Here am I, send me. There's nothing that motivates a zealous servant more than the freedom found by the grace of God. Ricky gave us some great challenges. I'd like to remind you of a few. Can I just give this to you? I mean, this is such an opportune time because we stand before an unwritten year. And the beginning of a matter is always filled with so much optimism. And I don't know about you, I love the first part of a year because I feel it too. I want this to be a great year. I want it for my family. I don't want to travel to Korea this year. I want to stay in the United States. I want for this church, I want this to be one of the greatest years you've ever had before. For you personally, I want it to be a year that you trust in God more than you ever have before. And that when you pray, you're getting beyond the same old repetitive, thoughtless words, that you're praying deep, meaningful prayers more than you ever have before. And that when you read, even if it's less, that when you really read, it sticks more because you're learning more and living it more. And one of the ways you're going to do that is by more. I can do more. This year, Ricky said, look for the opportunity to touch someone's life. Someone here, someone outside. Look for the opportunities to appreciate and to invest myself in my family. We make a mistake when we say that home life is not the work of God. That's a gift of God. There's not a greater work of God than you caring for your family and your kids. Invest yourself in your family this year. Look for ways to bless a local church. How about this? This year, I'm going to be hospitable more than I have before. Maybe that doesn't mean going to my house, but I'm going to take you out to eat. I'm going to treat you to a meal. I'm going to sit across the table, and we're going to fellowship, and I'm going to get to know you more. This year, I'm going to be active in the Bible class curriculum. I've never taught a class, but I'm excited to try or to see at least where I can be used. Maybe I can cut things out. Maybe I can be a sub-teacher, helper teacher, but I'm going to do something this year with our Bible classes. We do a lot of things, VBS, youth weekends, and one of our events, I'm going to volunteer. Whatever they need, cutting things out, building things, inviting people in, I'm going to be a part of that this year. This year, I'm bringing someone with me. It might take all year long of asking and pleading, but this year, I'm bringing someone with me to services. I'm bringing them here. They're going to come to worship with me. I'm inviting them in. I'm going to make sure they have a place to seat, but that's my challenge. Last year, I didn't invite anyone. I'm going to do some more this year. I'm going to invite someone in and make sure that they come. And this year, I'm going to be a blessing. I'm going to bless a young person this year. Boy, we've got some of the best young people in this country. I'm going to find one, and I'm going to make this a great year for them because I'm going to swallow them in blessings. I'm going to surround them with kindness. I'm going to fill their houses with treats and goodies and with kind notes and cards. I'm going to bless their 2020 by letting them know there's an older member of Christ who loves them. and I'm going to find someone who's older, and I'm going to be the most loving, sweet, kind servant I can as a young person. I'm going to find someone who's older than me, and I'm going to bless them this year. 2020, that's my challenge. I'm going to reach out to someone I haven't reached out to before, and I'm going to bless their year. Do you see it? Those who have tasted the kindness of God, the goodness of God. Oh, we've been broken. We've come from a people of unclean lips. But when God reaches forward with salvation, with his forgiveness, we reach up and say, I'm here, and I'm ready. Whatever you need, here am I, send me. Can we do that this year? More. Not less. Not the same. More. More. I heard about a grandfather who's taken his grandson through his property. He showed him a tree that, when he was his age, was just a little sapling. Now great and tall, towering into the sky. He took him down by the barn, showed him where a little path of a river at one time was just a little brook, now turned into a giant little man-made lake. Grandson was so impressed, and he said, Grandfather, you've seen so much in your life. You ever see God? He says, have I ever seen God? He says, it's getting to the point where he's all I see anymore. Wouldn't that be something? By the end of 2020, all I see, everywhere I look, is God. Something great happens, and I'm praising God. What a blessing. What a blessing. Or something bad happens. I think, God, thank you for being with me to walk with me through it. I look at my family, and I think, thank God for these incredible blessings. I hear that creaky garage every time I hit the button to go home, and I think, thank you, God, for giving me a roof and giving me a garage. I look at my neighbors, and I say, thank you, God, for making man in your image and for sending your son for them too, and for me. Everywhere I look, I just see God. This year, let's lift our eyes, not from earth up, from heaven down. What would it be to see life from God's perspective? God's willing to forgive you. God is willing to adopt you into his family if you're willing to come to him. And this morning, that may be exactly what you need. You could come here with a lot of burdens on your heart. You may be here this morning with a lot of things that you need help with. And if that is indeed the case, if you need some help or some encouragement, maybe some prayers, maybe you're ready to start your journey with Christ and you just have a lot of questions, you've come to a great place at a great time. Right here's where you need to be. If we can help you in any way this morning, just come on right down here.